Whew. I didn't know how much longer the jump shields could hold. That was a really long one. Where did we come out?
Um, we're on the other side of the moon right now. I'm gonna bring us around to Earth and wait a minute. This is no moon.
It's an asteroid. The moon is over there.
Okay, just going to casually peel away from this asteroid and get a bit closer to Earth, which, other than the additional moon, is looking pretty good.
Yeah, and no radiation alarms going off this time, so there's that. Oh boy, wait a second. I have multiple security threats, including a few Omega level threats.
It looks like there are also mutants on this version of Earth, but it doesn't look like they were made from nuclear fallout like the last ones.
Well, there's no Wi-Fi I can connect to. Yeah, for the heck of it, let me try some old school television and radio transmissions.
Radio? Like like live podcasts?
Yeah, I'm just gonna pretend like I didn't hear that.
I just got an ad for Final Fantasy VII. Wait, and GoldenEye. Ooh, I love that game on the N64.
Wait, so 1997? We're in 1997? Wait a minute. An asteroid orbiting Earth, Omega level mutants in 1997? We must have bamped into the X-Men 97 universe.
Yes, I love this cartoon growing up. Let's get to work, squad.
Even the best laid plans. I believe it was Robert Burns who said, "Gang after me."
4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off.
This is The Verse, a weekly dive into the cinematic universes and beyond. We'll dissect the latest episodes, films, and news all fans from veterans to noobs are dying to know more about. Now, here's our team of pop culture superheroes we call the Verse Squad.
Welcome to the Verse.
Welcome back to The Verse, the podcast that will remember it. Today, we're discussing Disney Plus's continuation of the hit cartoon series from the 90s, X-Men 97. But before we do that, let's meet the team. I'm Norm.
I'm Lucas.
And I'm Emilia, and this is The Verse News, where we bring you the latest in TV, film, pop culture, and superhero news from across the cinematic universes and beyond. So, let's see what the squad has come up with this week.
I'm sure we're all Tolkienites here.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if is that the preferred terminology.
Tolkieneers, Tolkienites.
Tolkien. Anyways,
Tolkienologists?
oh, I don't know if I like that one.
No,
Too
it
close to
doesn't roll off the
Scientology. No, thank you. But anyways, there will be a new Lord of the Rings movie directed by Andy Serkis about Gollum. How does everyone feel about this?
Okay, well, how do I feel about it is a good way to, because we don't know anything beyond that, right? We know that they're making another feature-length movie directed by Serkis, which is, so when I first heard that, I was like a little bit optimistic and interested and also a little bit worried. First of all, I don't really care about the search for Gollum. I feel like, what a weird story to like focus on. I mean, I'd rather do something way in the past or way in the future or something just unique and weird. But that being said, remove my skepticism a little bit. Serkis has directed some interesting stuff, and he, the Planet of the Apes movie, he was phenomenal in. He also is directing this an Animal Farm movie that's coming out as well. And he did Venom 2, which, by the way, was like a fun movie. It wasn't like a great movie. So he has actually some directing chops under his belt. So who knows? Like, this could be cool. I'm willing to like reserve my judginess until it comes out, and maybe I'll see it. We'll see what the trailers look like.
That's
Yeah.
fair.
I can't help but think like, I don't feel the need for this. I did not ask for it. I don't know who did, and I love Andy Serkis, and I think it's gonna be like fine. But I don't know if I needed it. I don't know if I
I don't
could.
think anybody needed it.
Emilia took the words right out of my mouth. Who's asking for this?
I,
Who
I have
went?
a,
You
I
know
have
what?
an idea.
You
You know
know
who's
what I
asking for
want
it?
is a Gollum only movie. Because let's face it, they tried the Gollum video game and that bombed bad.
I didn't even know they
Nobody
did that.
nobody wants a Gollum only story.
Yeah, like no offense to Gollum, like I'm not gonna say we love Gollum, but like as a character,
He's
great, good, but it's like an entire movie just for him is a lot.
yeah.
And
I don't. He doesn't have main character energy. I'm sorry.
that's
I
true.
completely agree, 100%. I mean, the reason we love him is because he's not the main character, right? Like, you spend too much time with him, he's going to start getting annoying. But I know who wanted this movie. It's the taxpayers of New Zealand. They needed, they were like, we need to have more tourism. We need the film industry in New Zealand was like, we need to get some more productions going on over here. So there you go. That's who probably demanded it, and they got what they wanted.
Then they should have supported Rings of Power more.
Well,
Ugh,
we have a season 2 coming up, don't
We
we?
do, but it's taken a while. Damn
Yeah.
COVID.
yeah. And I don't know, I guess maybe it wasn't a big enough hit. Somehow this
I
will be.
still liked it.
Somehow
Can't
this
wait for season 2.
somehow Palpatine returned. Yes, I don't think. Yeah, I think we're all on the same page here, though. Like, very small expectation, and who knows? Maybe that's why we'll be surprised.
Yeah, could be. But yeah,
Well,
I'm
what
gonna set
I'm
the bar
excited.
low on this one.
Yeah,
I'll probably, it sounds like it could be like a fun, once we see the trailer and stuff, I like, yeah, maybe I would go see it, like for a laugh, for a little night out or something. Yeah.
Totally.
can't blame you for that. What I wanted to talk about today, though, was the Dune Prophecy trailer. Because as y'all know, big Dune fan, and I've been waiting for this one because I even said like trying to take those stories and crush them into a movie. I've said it on this podcast. It's like it's a tall order. So having a TV show, you can really explore the lore and kind of the world building that Frank Herbert did. And by making it take place 1,000 years before Dune and focusing on the Bene Gesserit, the sisterhood is so much more interesting to me. Like this is exactly the kind of stuff I wish they, I guess Rings of Power they're kind of doing, right? Like focusing on
Mhm.
more world building, more lore, and being able to then have a license to create your own story instead of just like butchering the source material.
What I extremely love about this is we're not on a goddamn desert planet.
Yeah,
So I'm
I
more
didn't even
interested
think
in
about
that. I'm just being serious here. Like I know we've talked about it on the Dune episodes and in discussing the trailer when it came out. You know, I'm just tired of going into space and going to a desert based planet. It's just getting annoying. Thanks, Star Wars.
Like, yeah, we
Dude,
get
I
it.
just
All
saw
everyone loves Star
Furiosa.
Wars. Everybody every single sci-fi writer at some point went and did ayahuasca in the desert, whatever. But
And if
So
they
it's
didn't, they probably should. But no,
so
but
it looks more interesting because like you said, Lucas, it's focusing on a different aspect of Dune. It's opening the world up, but to me, like the best thing about this so far is I'm seeing something that looks different from what I've seen so far in the 2 movies that have been released and the old one that I watched when
mhm.
I can't even remember how old.
I mean, it looks good. It looks very like high fantasy in a way, and it's very elaborate. It's very aesthetic. As someone who doesn't really know like anything about the universe except for Dune 2, notably
which we
still
never
not Dune
talked
1.
about on this podcast. We should do a discussion of that at some point. But yeah.
But I do like the idea of focusing on the sisterhood, which to me, I'm just sort of like the witches. They're witches, right?
No, they
Exactly.
are.
Yeah.
They call them witches in the universe, the
Yeah,
Bene
that makes
Gesserit
sense.
witches.
Yeah.
Um, but what's funny to me about this is it originally was titled Dune Sisterhood, and then now they released it as Dune Prophecy. So they must have like market tested the sisterhood, and all the bros were like, "I ain't watching a movie about sisters," and they like now it's called Dune Prophecy. But
Yeah.
that being said, it doesn't look like anything else really changed about it because the focus is the Bene Gesserit. Um, yeah, I mean, I'm totally psyched for it. And it's on HBO, which makes me feel so much comfort because they don't like put out bad productions. You might not like something of theirs, but you know the quality will
No,
be there.
yes, the high quality, got to give them that. Production value is usually there.
Mhm.
So,
Yeah.
So it could be good. Again, I'm more excited at the fact that we're not on a desert planet than anything else.
Which is what I did want to dovetail into the final thing to talk about, and we'll be super quick, is I saw Furiosa last weekend, and I loved it personally, but it did make me laugh. It's like you can't get out of the desert. We just can't get out of the wasteland. We had like Fallout, we have, you know, Furiosa, we have Dune, we have Star Wars. It's like, oh my
Can
God, let's get out
can
of the
we get
desert.
a post-apocalyptic where it's like, oh, Waterworld? Never mind.
Waterworld. Waterworld. It's like the only one though.
Because I mean, I'm not a doomsayer so much, but like, if any of the apocalyptic scenarios might be likely, that one seems like the higher likelihood one right now.
Actually, do you know
So
what's a good
I
one
don't
that's out
know.
now too? Is the Planet of the Apes ones, the Kingdom of the Planet of the Apes, and that's like humans don't exist, but there's a lush life in world.
yeah,
So that's kind of cool.
that's
I'm
it.
into that one. Yeah.
I wonder if it's because a lot of this stuff came out in like the 70s, and that's when we were just learning about global warming and climate
Nuclear war
change,
though too was still on
Yeah.
on
nuclear
everybody's
fallout.
minds. Yeah,
Very
exactly.
fresh.
Still, just saying, I want more. Oh, this is lush and amazing, rather than, oh God, look, sand is everywhere. Anakin would be killing himself.
Yeah, but I do want to take a poll, show of hands, like who has seen all the Mad Max movies and loved every single one of
M-
them.
Minus Furiosa, I've seen them. I don't love them all, but I don't hate them.
I have only
Uh,
seen the Mad Max trailer from like a few years back, more than a few years back, I guess. But like the new Mad Max
Fury
Fury
Road.
Road.
So you
Fury
never saw
Road,
the movie Fury Road.
right?
Oh man, I really want you to watch. I actually kind of want you to watch Furiosa, then Fury Road.
Wait, wait,
The
wait.
the
I've seen the one, the last Mad Max movie that came out in
With
the
Tom
one
recent.
with
Hardy
Tom
in it.
Hardy
Yeah,
and Charlize Theron, right?
yeah.
So you
Yeah.
actually seen that one, not
I
just the
have seen
trailer.
that one.
Oh, okay, never mind. Darn it, I wanted to try something which was gonna have you watch Furiosa, then Fury Road, because it's totally like such an awesome, you know, prelude, fills in the character, but at the same time, I think somewhat kind of pointless. But I didn't care because I
Mm.
love that world so much. I just want to hang out there all the time in the wasteland with the weirdos and the freaks and the war boys. So like I had a great time on it, but it's like I just want to know somebody who's never watched Fury Road to watch that one, then and I feel like they're gonna have a better experience. Anyway,
Maybe. I did
anyway.
remember seeing it and being like, this is Borderlands, or rather Borderlands is this.
Yeah, pretty
Right.
much Borderlands ripped up. In which Borderlands the movie is coming out, directed by Eli Roth, who I do not like very much. In fact, I hate him.
Still
Sorry, Eli.
interested to see how that's gonna go. I'm a little worried
Don't
about that one.
don't hold
My
back,
brother,
Lucas. Tell us how you really feel.
well, my brother-in-law, when I saw the trailer for it, when I was going to see one of the movies, was like, "But mom, we have Guardians of the Galaxy at home." I was like, uh, or the
Ouch.
reverse, whatever. Yeah, no, it literally looks like they were like, okay, let's make Guardians of the Galaxy, but then slap it on the Borderlands,
Yeah, just
label on it.
reskin
So
it.
exactly, it feels exactly like that. And granted, that could be the trailer, but no. I'm not, I love playing the Borderlands as a video game. I'm not like, I just, Eli Roth, I just he gets under my skin. I do not like that guy as a director. And I know I have all these stories from, I worked in the same place as him in New York of just people who do not like working with him. So I've been
Mm,
somewhat poisoned.
interesting.
Fair enough.
All right. So anyway, I think that's it.
Well, if there are no further thoughts, then that was the Verse news. So why don't we now talk about Disney Plus's X-Men 97?
Let's do it.
That's the planet we're on, or the asteroid that we're close to.
We're between here
orbiting.
and the asteroid. It's fine. We got a good vantage point here. So Lucas and I have talked about this in the past, that we grew up watching the original animated series. But I'm curious, Emilia, have you ever seen any of the original animated series this is based off of?
I don't think so. No, like I've seen the characters, of course, but before this, the only X-Men I'd really like consumed was the recent movies, and not all of them even, but like I saw X-Men First Class, Days of Future Past, um, another one, and Logan, and I thought they were all really good. I especially loved Days of Future Past, if I recall correctly. It's been a while, but I've always thought it was like a cool series. I just like never really got into it. And so I feel like coming into this one, like right off the bat, I kind of knew the concept, right? It's supposed to be like a uh an homage, a revival or whatever. And I was sort of like watching it and being like, this, like it feels like there's a whole culture here that I don't fully understand. And so I feel like I would love it if you guys could like place it for me in the timeline in the where is it in the zeitgeist?
That's a great question because it's the X-Men just have such a long history now of just like all these different projects that have come. Like the movie cinematic universe of the X-Men is very different and far removed from the comic books, and even the cartoon was somewhat removed from the comic books because they took pieces of the stories and reused them and redid them, right? Some of the best comic book runs, they had pieces of them in the cartoon, and they did the same thing with the movies but differently. So it's like it's kind of a pastiche of all these different, all these different stories.
Yeah, you got to remember that even the movies themselves don't directly tie into the other movies.
Yeah, that's true. The movies were decent, some of them better than others, but at the same time, as a true X-Men fan, like the cartoons got the closest to what I loved about the comic books. And I will say, not spoiler, but like how I feel about this revival is like it is channels the feelings of when I would read the comic books and a lot about how I feel about the characters and the storylines. Like they do a pretty darn good job of translating what was cool about the comic books into the cartoon.
There's a ton of Chris Claremont, who was like the big writer and art guy for
Or the
the
90s, right?
X-Men in the heyday. Yeah,
Yeah.
even before Jim Lee took over as artist, and everyone now copies Jim Lee's designs when it comes to the X-Men. Chris Claremont had some amazing stories with the X-Men, and they've borrowed every single one of them for the original run of this series and now, which says a lot because this was the 70s he was writing about, and the material still translates way too well.
I mean,
Yeah, and I was
it is really interesting and it's clearly like highly allegorical. Um, Unfortunately, I'm cynical about allegory because I feel like all allegories are at best imperfect. And
Sure. Well, I mean, they can't be perfect. I honestly I don't think an allegory can be perfect. I think it can come close, but not quite be there.
so I will say, like, I don't love X-Men as an allegory for like any kind of civil rights movement because I feel like the whole it's like I'm sorry, but like I kind of am I'm not like saying I'm like taking a side or whatever, but I'm like the mutants,
no, that's
the ones that we know and love, like they are dangerous. Like that's not we can't
yeah,
pretend like that's not true. I'm not saying that we should, be like exterminating them or whatever. Like, but it's like they are dangerous, and I feel like whenever they're like, I can't believe they hate me just because I'm different. It's like they shouldn't hate you, but it's not just because you're different.
yeah, the
No,
boys
but
does a better job of like making it like if it was reality, what would this be like? But like that, the funny thing is the allegory side of it, like you knew it was there when you were a kid reading it, but that's not why I was reading it. Like what I loved about it is kind of the soap opera-y, especially as an adult now, I recognize like, oh, I loved all the characters and how they interacted. Like I just had my favorite characters. They constantly be bickering amongst themselves, having to team up to solve a problem. Like it was never one person was the hero. It was the team had to work together, like on Next Generation, right? They had to like figure out how to work together to save humanity all the time. And like that's what I loved about it. It was always like a team effort.
There's definitely more to the universe. Like you can tell even just looking at this, like there's definitely more than just that, like that allegory, like
Yeah.
piece that I was calling out, because it's like there's still clearly a ton of potential for, like writing in messages, writing in like viewpoints and things. And I think that that is really great, especially because it seems like there's like the X-Men are so diverse, and it
Hmm.
seems like there's a lot of opportunity to explore their like real life identities too, like the ones that we would have in real life. And it kind of seems also like just from my basic Googling, there's a lot more like queer X-Men than there seem to
tons.
be
Oh, let's
on,
talk about that when we get
yeah.
into our favorite characters from this series.
So that's nice to see. So like overall, I'm like it is a cool franchise. Like it is very interesting what they're doing.
Hmm.
Yeah, I tend to I know what you mean, Emilia, with the whole they are dangerous thing, but I think the argument here is less about them being just accepted as like who they are and more or less the idea of being weaponized. And I think
Mm.
that's something now more than back when this was happening is more of a threat and something that exists more now than back then. The
Well,
idea of
yeah.
weaponizing people.
And one of the
I mean
storylines I
that's
loved in
literally a storyline here.
yeah. But one of the storylines I loved when I was younger, you're talking about the allegory thing, was there were the Morlocks where I found fascinating because they were like
Yeah.
the gross, disgusting outcast mutants. Like not everybody got to have like cool Jean Grey powers or like I got these cool claws like Wolverine. No, they were like hideous and deformed, and it was like this idea that there was also this subclass of creature of like mutants that were just completely outcasts and they were never going to really be accepted because they're physically revolting. And that was like really cool in my head as a kid, especially being like, that's twisted. Like, can you imagine that's your curse with that kind of mutant power? Like, it was just cool. I think they really, especially the comic books, really played around with that. Granted, I
Yes.
don't think a lot of that fully get translated into the cartoons because they just didn't have time to go down a lot of these stories.
Yeah, I mean, again, you're truncating things to try and make
Yeah.
points, which you lose a lot of flavor, and we can definitely talk about that going forward. But like, yeah, I still think the idea though that they're pulling out here is one of like, it plays out through the whole Magneto versus Charles Xavier Vision
Hmm.
idea, and I always like the fact that they don't paint it as simple in the comic books. They try harder than what they did in the original animated series of painting it gray, shades of gray, whereas
Yeah.
in the original animation it was kind of black and white, and in this they go back to those shades of gray more
Yeah.
like
Can we talk?
who's right here now, like what's going on. And I loved the fact that in this you even see the X-Men themselves, different ones at different times, questioning who's right and who's wrong. And
And
it's one of those
crossing
things where it's
over
like,
back and forth. Yeah.
yeah, and it's one of those things where it's like it shows that they're not just all drinking the Kool-Aid of either side. And I love that about this.
Yeah. And I mean the friendship between the deep relationship that is like the deep bond between Xavier and Magneto is very like I think it's really cool. And I remember like that was a big feature in the movies that I watched when they were like younger, and then now, when they're older. And I feel like that was always such great representation of like not necessarily queerness, right? Even though it is super queer coded, but just of like deep like male bonding, what
Yeah.
of like whatever flavor you want to ascribe to it. And it's not really something that like you see a lot in like media in general. I was gonna say like superhero media, but like in general, you don't see a ton of that. So I always thought that like that gave the series so much of its power for me.
And I think that's what in this series that we just watched, is some of the best parts of it. Like next when we want to talk about our favorite characters and parts, like I love Magneto in this reboot. Like I don't think I ever actually connected to him that much outside of the comic books in like the original cartoon. I kind of just like you said, Norman, they kind of made him the foil, right? It was like
Mhm.
you're just kind of the psycho mutant who wants to kill all the human. Like they just didn't do the balance well. And this one, I was like, I don't know, I'm kind of rooting for Magneto, and he has such cool powers. And then where he's all messed up, and in his mind, and Xavier's in there with him, and they're broing it out. They're just like hugging each other. Like that to me was some of the best scenes of the whole series that we just watched. So yeah, I mean, I think what they did well in this one is some of the best strengths of the comic books, which is that tension between these two characters. And I love that you're saying queer coded because I have to admit, like, I don't think the comic books really ever felt that way, but they did not hold back in this interpretation this time of you're seeing how close the guys are. Just like what the relationship is deeper than just a typical friendship or frenemy situation, which I really like. I mean, they're
Yeah.
almost like two halves of a psyche, right?
There there was for a long time a comparison between the two of them, between Xavier and Magneto, to Malcolm X and Martin Luther
Hmm.
King Jr. That was like
Yeah.
a direct comparison that was made for a very long time. They both loved each other. They both thought, very highly of each other. They both had a vision of, of unity. It's just that they had different
Yeah,
ideas of
different
how
approaches of
it would
how
get
to
there.
achieve the same
And
goal. Yeah.
right. And it's one of those things where when you look back, you go, oh, this side's definitely right and this side's definitely wrong. But then you start seeing the actual applications. And, look, our experiences dictate our reality and our view on reality. And Magneto's view on reality is skewed from the fact that he was a Jewish kid who was captured by the Nazis, put in concentration camps, and literally watched his family be murdered. So you understand why he has no faith in humanity. And
Yeah.
Yeah.
it also understands that
Justifiable.
Xavier grew up a rich, spoiled kid who didn't have to worry about anything, and you understand why he's more hopeful about things. Like you
Hmm.
kind of
Yeah.
understand where these guys come from, but
Are they
it
not both right? Like, are they not both
Yeah.
extremely qualified to make commentary on humanity of people who might have seen like the best and the worst?
Hmm.
which is why I say it's our experiences that dictate our reality and our perception of reality, and that's what I love about the conversation. That basically it's not a war between them. I wouldn't call it a war, but it's definitely a battle of some kind. And I love that, and I love that they
So
didn't
it's a
shy away
moral
from it
battle. I
here.
like it. It's like
Yeah,
yeah, who's really, it's not even like who's right. That's what I mean. Like they both have the same goal. It's just their tactics are completely at odds and opposed to
it
each other.
it's honestly just a balancing act. They both need to exist to point
Yeah.
people into the right direction.
But I
And
mean, it's like two sides of the psyche, right?
yeah, that should be the takeaway. Like you actually need both these people to point true north, because the
Yeah.
one's not completely right and the other one's not completely wrong.
Yeah. Well, all right. So what besides like I said, that scene where they're inside Magneto's mind and they're all like, battling it out and trying to like save Magneto's consciousness, whatever. What other scenes did everybody really like? Because I have a list of my top few, and I'm curious if it's similar to what y'all have.
The I the the genocide at Genosha was an
Freaking hits
amazing,
hard.
hits hard. There's so many good moments. There's the moment where Nightcrawler pulls them out and he gets nailed, and I love Nightcrawler, by the way.
Yes, he is excellent in this. One of my top
He is
characters.
like my second favorite X-Men of all time.
Yeah.
My first favorite does not appear in this series. Well, he does for a split second, but we'll get into that later. Um, but that scene where Magneto looks down at wow, I can't think of the Morlock kid's name. Looks
Which
like
one was
Toad,
it?
but it's not.
The little green kid?
Yeah, the little green
Yeah.
kid. I can't remember his name. Wolverine saves him in the Christmas episode too. Um, but when he looks at him, he goes, "Don't be afraid," but he says it in German. Oh,
Yeah.
oh, that was powerful because
Yeah.
German Jewish kid,
Kid, yeah,
that
he's
had a,
like, I've been through this, boy.
and
Yeah.
then seconds later to see Gambit just be like, the name's Gambit. Remember
Dude,
it. I was like, oh man, this was two great things
that
back to
for me
back. I
was
love it.
probably the best, the most like shocking and the coolest death
Coolest death
scene.
scene I've seen in a while.
It was such a good use of his powers too. That's why it was so cool. It was like everything that, again, like what I would love in the comic books when they would hit something where you're like, the character so well. It's the perfect death for him. And I just didn't think they'd kill him already. I was like, oh my God, it was so
I
well
was
done.
surprised. Yeah, that was up there for me too because like I was coming to really like Gambit. I was like, I think this is such a cool character. Like if I was a teenager watching this, I would totally latched onto this character, because it's like very flashy, it's very cool. Um and the eye thing is cool, teenagers love edgy eye things. And like and then like he died for now, I guess. I feel like X-Men
Well, yeah,
they
we
come
can
and
get
go,
into
right?
that. We can get into that.
We'll get
But
into that, but yeah.
I was like, I can't believe I was like, there's only 10 episodes and of this. And I know that like cartoons like this, like I don't know, I thought there were like a million episodes. I can't believe they would kill him off like
And it was only like the
four
fifth
in.
episode or something,
Yeah.
right? It was like
I
halfway over. I was like, what the hell?
I think it was a big test to see if they could do it. And now that they
Mhm.
had, I have a funny feeling the next season might be more episodes, but we'll we'll talk about that later. I will
Okay.
say this, Emilia, Gambit is a very cool character. Of all
He's
the
super cool.
characters in this particular iteration of X-Men, he is probably my favorite with Nightcrawler right behind him.
So be
But
rooting for him in Rogue. Like,
do not, I repeat, do not read the comic books, because this version of Gambit is probably the furthest from any of the like translations.
hmm, interesting. Okay.
If you
Um,
enjoy a dirty rotten scoundrel, Gambit's your
Yeah, if you
man
want
in the
somebody who's a
comic
little
books.
slimier, yeah.
Yeah, he's much
ooh,
slimier in the comic books, but
But that's why he was cool
this is like
because he was like a
reformed Gambit. Yes.
yeah,
yeah, pretty much.
which he did in the comic books. They did like we would go
Hmm.
back and forth, but he was like a criminal before he was like in the
They
X-Men.
mentioned
So
Thieves Guild.
Yep.
yeah, exactly. But
Interesting.
that's why he was fun. He was a scoundrel. He was like an outlaw, and that's why the tension with him and Rogue it was always fun because of that. Like it's like that the Leia Han Solo thing. It's kind of the same archetype. Um,
Yes.
but Rogue really kicks ass in this one. My God, that's what I mean. They use the characters properly. Like Rogue is a badass, and like they finally you get to see her wrath, which I did not expect either. Like, and I just love her and Magneto's relationship. Like this is what I mean. Like it's all the soap opera stuff I loved as a kid, or like why I had to read the next episode to see what was going to happen with not just the plot but the relationships.
I was like frustrated by her and Magneto at first because I was like, clearly there's a love triangle that I don't have the context for. I Googled a little bit, like I didn't want to Google too much, obviously, but then I was like sort of reading about the nature of their relationship and like why, and I was like, I get it, like
It
that's like one
it's
of the like she like can't even touch Gambit, and that's hard. That sucks.
there's several interesting relationships that happen for Rogue just out of that need for to actually be able to touch someone. And
Yeah.
there's only three mutants, I believe, that she can touch, Magneto being one.
hmm
Um, but yeah, Rogue is awesome. Another great scene with her is where she actually throws Henry Gyrick off the
Yeah,
roof.
yeah.
Wasn't expecting it.
They kept
I was
doing that
like,
It's
stuff.
more of a drop.
Yeah,
It's more of a drop than a throw.
okay, it was a drop, but let's face it.
yeah, she threw him to his death.
Yeah,
She he
she knew that was death.
She's like, I
he was
meant to do
murdered.
that.
He
Yeah,
was going to kill himself, but then he was also murdered.
yeah.
So
But I mean, this is what I mean. Did not feel like a kid show in that way. Like, you're
Mm-mm.
watching it, and the previous version of this, they would never have done any of this stuff because it was like a
It-
lighter show. I mean, it was for more targeted towards kids, is what I felt like when I was watching it as a kid.
yeah, I think they might have done the Genosha stuff. I don't think they would have done uh Rogue killing, because she's supposed to be a good guy. So I don't think they would
Yeah.
have done that. Um,
Oh, I also
yeah,
don't think they would have had Morph be so freaking fabulously gay, which was like one of the best changes for me because he was like I couldn't believe it. I thought everybody was gonna enjoy him as much as me, and then I went online, everybody's like bitching about him. I'm like, whatever. He was like one of the more fun characters.
yeah,
first off, I want to remind everyone this was a character that did not exist in the comic books before this animation. The animation in the 90s came out.
hmm
Before 93, this character did not exist. So it was 100% a fabrication from this.
Yeah,
And
I
yeah,
don't understand how people can like look at a character like that whose fun is like he was having so much fun, and the idea that he can turn into anybody. That I'm like, okay, the power is actually kind of lame in some ways. I mean, it can be interesting. It gets old quick though. You're like, okay, what is he gonna do next? But he's more interesting as how they use him as a character, like
yeah,
how he interacts with all the
outside
other
of fighting.
X-Men. Exactly, like fighting, he's actually one of the more boring ones for me. But I do love how he like his friendship with Wolverine is awesome. Like I just love
yeah,
to me I'm like I totally buy it. Like that exactly I would just be convinced they'd be like total buds just knowing
yeah.
how Wolverine's character is.
I also want to call it a double standard here because everyone was mad about Morph being non-binary and apparently not just get he like omnisexual, I guess,
Yeah.
is
Yeah,
what
that's a better way to say it.
a lot of people were calling that out. But nobody batted an eye when it came out Mystique made out with women and other women and stuff like
Oh,
that, and
well, I
shagged
mean,
guys. It's like, come on, guys, like this is
there's a lot
pathetic
to get
now.
into there.
There
There's
Yeah.
is, but at the same time, it's like it's a direct one for one. Come on.
The
Oh,
biphobia and the uneven application of biphobia is very real. Erasure and phobia at the same time.
so
Yeah,
fucking.
it's okay. We can bleep.
Just bleep that out.
Yeah, it's fine. We have good AI that bleeps all this stuff on board. Yeah, I mean that again though, I'm going to say like this is what I liked about the comic books and what I think they do well is the different relationships that can be very complex that can cross like you were saying gay coded, but there's all this like sexual tension between all the characters. I mean, it's become kind of a joke now with like the love triangle with Wolverine and Cyclops and Jean Grey, and then but then you just keep it just keeps spiraling out where you're like, oh man, every character kind of has some relationship, like Storm and Forge, who I've always loved Forge, by the way.
Forge
Like
is a
I
cool
was always said,
character.
if I could have one person's mutant skills, like Forge is like the most practical. But like Storm, again, Storm is awesome
Storm
in
is
this
so
show.
cool.
She is. She's always
Storm
was
is
one of my
great.
favorite ones, and she was such a badass. And they finally made her feel that way in this show. Like, actually, they did in the originals, though. She was great in the original
She was
version
great
of
in
the
the
show.
originals.
Yeah.
I was also reading a little bit about Storm, and was it true that like she was going to have a queer romance, and then they were like, then like the editor at the time was like, not under my watch will there
Oh, I
be
don't
any
know.
gays in this comic book.
I mean, I wouldn't be
Um.
surprised at the time, but
Her and Yukio.
Oh, I don't.
This is,
Maybe.
I was reading a wiki.
I
I
mean, it's quite possible. I mean, I love the
don't
comic books, but
remember.
especially when I was younger, I was not like I was following any of the what was going
In
on behind the scenes.
in the comic book, she ends up marrying T'Challa,
Yeah, yeah.
Black
And apparently
Panther.
that was like what they did instead of having this romance because of the leadership direction at the time.
I will say this: the moment she got married to Black Panther, the Black Panther comic books got so much better.
Oh,
So,
really?
oh
I never
my,
read those.
yeah,
Okay.
they went from Incredible Iron Man level to X-Men level of like,
Hmm.
hey, let's pay attention to this stuff
Cool.
Mhm.
because
All
it
right.
was great.
Well,
My favorite character in this is definitely Gambit. When until and then once Gambit's out, we see Nightcrawler come in, and I'm like, all right. And I've always loved Nightcrawler in all the different series he's ever been in. He has amazing power, but in this one, I've always loved his tie to religion
mhm.
because it made the character and the idea of what Magneto would preach so different and gave a depth that I absolutely loved.
Yeah, I also loved, so we talked about Storm, great. I think it's really interesting that she has claustrophobia. It makes a lot of sense. And then I also really liked Jubilee, even though she didn't get like that much development. Like I felt like, I feel like there's
Sorry to
there's
say.
more for her,
She
right?
didn't
Sorry
in
to
the original
say.
series at all
She
either.
never gets. They never do anything for Jubilee. I feel terrible.
Oh
Like
man.
my favorite stuff with Jubilee was the Wolverine comics. She actually got to do some a little bit more, but even then, like she always was kind of just sidelined
No,
constantly.
they tried repackaging Dazzler from the 70s and it didn't work for the 90s teens.
Mm. I just
Just
like
be
her powers.
Yeah, they're kind of
fireworks.
like fireworks. That's it.
Yeah,
It's like it's cute.
it's
Yeah.
cool, but I feel like she has potential, and like they maybe if they invest in her in season two,
Look, as long as they don't make her into a vampire like they did in the comic books, we're
Oh,
fine.
oof. Yeah.
Yeah, what's well,
like her and her little budding romance with the DaCosta kid,
Sunspot.
Sunspot, like that's kind of cute. And I'm
We'll
I'm like
see. Yeah.
she's our Gen Z representation. She maybe she's queer too. I don't know. I also like any character that's like feminine with black hair. I always latched onto because not a lot of Asian representation growing up. So I was like, I don't care if they're Asian or not. They're Asian now.
I always was
What
such a fan of hers though when I was a kid. 'Cause, like I think part of the just because she didn't seem like she was always felt like she was in over her head, right? Like unlike a lot of the other mutants have these crazy cool powers, it was like she could just do the fireworks thing, but she always was like showing up and working hard, right? And like so I always kind of I was always rooting for her, but I felt like they never knew what to do with her and they just kept sidelining her anyway. And she like
I
I said, she
like
was Wolverine's like on his solo comic book, she was like his sidekick for so many cool arcs. And still then though
That
she
tracks. That makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
I do like the fact that they did bring back the jokes of, well, my parents named me Jubilation.
Hmm.
Like, okay, yeah,
That's rough.
that's
Yeah.
rough.
But yeah, what
Some
else
other great
from?
moments. Episode 2, is it, where Magneto takes the entire UN Security Council
Oh yeah,
into near
into
orbit?
orbit. Yeah. I just love him in this series. I mean, because it's like he should be terrifying, right? Like his powers are so
Mhm.
vast, um, and yeah, he's so righteous, like which self-righteous, which is you definitely got all that from watching this series. And he has the long flowing hair. I like that look on him. And they took
Yeah.
the outfit straight out of the comic
The
books, which
comics.
is cool.
Yep,
Yeah,
all of
He's
them.
very like
Yeah.
godly looking, you know?
yeah,
Which is why I love seeing him and Nightcrawler around each other, because Magneto basically treats himself like he is a god, and Nightcrawler's still like, there's a higher power than us,
yeah, yeah.
buddy. Which is
Oh,
also true in all the Marvel
yeah.
universe. There are higher powers.
But what about our cameos? I thought you'd be talking about the Captain America cameo, the
Yeah, I did
Hulk
not see that
cameo,
coming.
Iron Man. Yeah, we got some
No,
good Marvel ones.
uh, Cap was in the original animated series too, here and there. I do not like what they do in relation with a lot of the non-mutant superhumans that like show up throughout the original run and then this run. They kind of make it seem like they're blasé to the mutant plight,
Mm.
which is very much not the case in the comic books. Very hard. Most of
Isn't
the
there like an
superheroes like,
iconic scene where like Cap is like holding a mutant kid or something? Anyway,
mm-hmm,
like saves a mutant kid. Anyway.
yeah, and from being Frankenstein torched,
Hmm.
basically, villagers with pitchforks and torches. Yeah,
I
you
think
don't
I
get
just
that
found
here.
it very funny and a little satisfying when Rogue called him what like the world's
America's Top
greatest
Cop. Oh,
America's greatest cop or whatever. I
Hmm.
was like, damn,
then she
Yeah.
threw a
roasted.
shield. The best part is she just tosses his shield. It's like,
All
damn it,
he
I
can
gotta go
do is
run and
just
get that.
just gotta frown. It's just like, dang it, that's gonna take me like 40 minutes.
I gotta run 20 miles to go pick it up.
You Morph alone gives us a ton of cameos,
Yeah.
including my favorite mutant being Colossus from the X-Men. Wish we got more of him in this, but whatever. We also get to see animated Spider-Man cartoon,
Hmm.
Mary Jane and Peter Parker. Also get to see Daredevil,
Yep.
Cloak and Dagger. We got to see a bunch of surprise people.
But it's good.
Yeah.
I mean, that shows that the whole world's being affected by what's going down. And I like that. I actually appreciate that they did that. It wasn't, it was kind of cameo-ish, but it also was like, this is such a big event. The entire world is getting affected by it. So
Yeah,
I like seeing that.
yeah, cringy box armor Iron Man
Um,
with the yellow and bright red. Looks like ketchup and mustard.
He definitely looks he got an upgrade and he actually got an upgrade in the MCU universe. Like
for
Very much
sure.
so.
What do we think about the main villains in this?
Well, Mr. Sinister is an amazing villain in the comic books. I would say actually a better
Awesome.
villain
Yeah.
than Magneto in the comic books, which says a ton.
mm,
Yeah.
But Bastion,
Eh.
um, I
it's an
mean,
I think
interesting one.
that was my weakest
techno
link. I say
Nazi.
the yeah. I think that to me was the weakest link was that, it just felt like, yeah, it's a villain that's, not very complex, right? Like you kind of know what his motivations are.
They were
Okay. It's
trying
like
though. They were
they
trying for like
were.
Magneto V2. And if I'm being honest, I was kind of getting like movie like Avengers 2 Age of Ultron vibes from him,
Oh
Yeah,
yeah. Oh
yeah.
yeah.
where it
And
was
it's not
like
like,
he's
yeah.
like high and mighty. It's supposed to be like they're trying to go for like this is a really compelling point of view, but we all know it's evil also, but it's like how I don't know if it was that well executed. Down to his
I
voice even.
I
Oh, I
think
did want to point out some of the voice actors, by the way.
I think for him, what it was basically like they needed someone to be the person that was behind the reason why Magneto and Charles's viewpoints would go at each other and split the X-Men at times, and reunite them, divide them, bring them back, whatever. And they just didn't want it to be Magneto again because that's going to be played out and people would expect that. So I don't think they nailed the landing with him. I think you're right. They could have done better with that particular character. But I still think in the end, yeah, he's not the greatest villain, but he served the purpose that he needed to, which was pitting the two moral philosophies against each other.
Yeah, and the things that I liked about what happened is like, listen, the Mr. Sinister stuff was great. Like that landed perfectly. We end up getting the whole Cable storyline, Bishop, like tying in all the Days of Future Past stuff that will come, right? Isn't that all directly
Mhm.
from that comic run? I'm trying to
Yeah.
remember.
Well, I think
Um,
Onslaught's coming up next, but we'll talk about that later.
no, but I mean, it's some great comic runs that they're pulling from, and they definitely teased a lot of what's to come. But I love all that stuff. Like Cable's of such a cool storyline, and it's such a cool character. Um, I never really was that impressed with like Cyclops and Jean Grey were kind of like boring to me. So, but
I
once
kind
the
of wanted to
sun,
say that too.
they are. I just feel like they're the most like those are the ones I'm just like, okay, get on with it. But then but
They're like
Cable's
the nice
cool.
suburban family of the X-Men.
Yeah,
Look, that whole dynamic goes crazy because Jean Grey and Madeline Pryor die and come back all the dang
too
time,
many
especially
times.
Jean more than anyone else dies and comes back.
It was
And it
confusing. It
just
was a little
wasn't working,
confusing.
which
Yeah.
is why they got rid of it in the comic books and shipped Cyclops and Emma Frost together, which
Yeah,
actually does work.
The thing
yeah.
about like I just remember Cyclops because I didn't really watch the cartoons as a kid, but I do remember like a little bit about Cyclops because he was like kind of like the main character, maybe of some of those
He was. Yeah.
cartoons. And I do remember his storyline being associated with a lot of like suffering because of his powers, like he can't control his eyeballs and so he can't look anybody in the eyes and it's very very big sad and keeps killing the people he loves. So sad. And I think at the time when I was a kid I was like, oh man, that's crazy, that's so deep, that's so hashtag deep. And now that I'm older I'm kind of like, in the grand scheme of the X-Men universe, like it's bad but like I don't know. it's
You got
I mean
Rogue
Rogue
there that
can't touch
literally can't
anyone.
touch anyone.
Yeah, exactly. It's get
You
over
have
yourself, buddy.
Nightcrawler that really can't go out in public.
Yeah.
Exactly.
He
So I
looks like a
was just sort of
devil. Yeah.
like, I was like, oh, should he really be the woe is me character?
Yeah.
Yeah. You have Mystique who can go out as anybody they want but themselves. And it's like
Mm.
there's a lot of deeper like, oh, woe is me characters than Cyclops.
Yeah. So again, like least interesting, but I love the Cable storyline with like he gets the virus, has to go to the future, and he's like he just comes back as such a freaking badass. So I was happy to see him. He made the appearance in this, and we're gonna get more of it. So because it feels like that's what they teased up for the next season. Um, so yeah, there was just so much good stuff that happened. So that's why I wasn't that bothered about the main villain not being like as interesting as it could have been, I guess. But like you said, he served a great purpose for all the other characters, all the other storylines. So I didn't really care. And we got all the X-Men teaming up at the end to defeat him, which is always what I love to see. So, no real complaints. I mean, it's like a nitpick, but I think it
Yeah,
was
it was
fine.
great.
I want to point out, by the way, so Professor X is voiced by Ross Marquand. Is that how you pronounce his name? The guy from
Oh, from The
Walking
Walking
Dead.
Walking
Dead.
Dead
He does so many
and
cool voices. He's an
So many
Avengers
Invincible
voices.
Endgame
yeah, exactly. As
and
what's
Infinity War. Red
the
Skull.
skull, Red Skull. Dude, this guy's awesome. He just pops up all over the place, especially doing voice acting, and I just wanted to point that out because I think he's super talented.
I didn't even recognize his voice,
No,
which
that's what I mean.
sign
Like
of
I
a good
don't
voice
know it's
actor, I guess.
right. Like that's what I'm saying. Like he's just I check the credits all the time and I'm like, man, that was him too. It's like crazy. So what about the theories on season 2? So, Norm, you sounded like you were like I'm struggling to remember the different comic runs because it does feel
It's
like they're
Onslaught.
pulling from quite a few, right?
It's Onslaught.
It's just
You're
Onslaught.
gonna.
Okay.
I don't want to spoil anything, but I'm going to spoil a bunch of things. Wolverine's gonna turn into one of the four horsemen of the
Horseman of the
apocalypse. Because
Apocalypse. Yeah.
that's when they go back to Egypt. That's the person they save is Apocalypse. So there
Yeah.
we go. There, Wolverine will be. I can't remember if he's War or Death. Somebody will remember, but he's one of them. Yeah, it's gonna be crazy. X-Men will be pitted against each other, and then it'll all get rewritten. And everyone will be back alive at the end of next season, probably.
It always gets a little boring
So
to
that's
me.
like
I like
the whole them being scattered across time thing. Like that's not just going to be a momentary gimmick, right? Like we're going to get to actually hang
That's
out
gonna be
in
an entire.
time.
That should be. If it's not the entire season, it should be at least half of the next season.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, I'd be
I
fine
like
with it
that.
being that whole season if they just. This is what we talked about previously on other shows. Like, why don't they just stick to the comic book stories? They were really good. Like, just redo them, and you know, and they were great episodic. Like, you can just end like maybe smush a few together, a few episodes, but like they had really good like characters and transitions that happened in the stories that you could just like follow kind of beat by beat.
There are so many, and they did pull a lot from in the original, and now there's even more from the pull from this one.
Hmm.
Including if it ever gets there, Avengers versus X-Men, or the Phoenix Force 5, as I like to call it. um, yeah, it would be there's a lot they can do, and I think look, even though I've seen a ton of bad outcry about this, mostly because of, oh, it's so woke, which is like, dude, if you didn't watch the originals, shut up because you missed the point. The originals literally had all of this stuff in there, especially the Magneto and Xavier thing. That was still like that. It just wasn't as long in the tooth with it.
Hmm.
It was still
Yeah,
there. So people can kiss my butt.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so I love everything they're doing so far. I hope there's a lot more seasons, and I hope they keep going with the morally gray stuff. Make me think. I love that.
Yeah.
Yeah, and keep it keep murdering people and being violent and you know the upgrade from this season to me felt the stakes felt higher. It was a little harsher, right? A little more adult, and I just think it improved everything. Like it made it more compelling to watch.
And the best thing, they kept the theme music.
Oh yeah.
That
Yeah.
awesome theme song.
So you said this was your favorite. I said it was mine was Batman the animated
This is my
series, and
favorite.
you said X-Men. Okay. I mean, I'm not gonna.
This
I never skip it. I have to admit.
this
It's like
this followed by the Power Rangers, the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers theme, then Batman the animated series. That's where
it's
I
very
go.
uh it's very synthy, but I do like how they repurpose it the throughout the runtime. Like it's not
Yeah.
just the intro or the outro. It's like scattered in.
And the theme being live, kind of like the Game of Thrones thing, where you know where you're gonna be and who's gonna
Oh
be in
yeah,
this
because they
episode
show the
based on
different
the
characters each
yeah.
time. Yeah, I love
and
that.
and different scenes that like to try and give you some like quick background on some of the other characters. Like
Yeah.
in the one we were talking about, the Genosha one, um they have the Morlocks in the opening theme, and you're like, why would they be? Oh, there's
Yeah.
Morlocks here. Okay, and they're all about to die.
Yeah, I like that.
Attention all crew. Dilithium chamber maintenance is required before jump to avoid
Ah,
risk of
Wookie
warp core
balls.
breach.
All right, whose turn is it to scrub the chamber?
I believe if I'm right, we were taking turns in ABC order, so that means next should be Emilia.
Ooh, I think I'm pretty sure we were going in order by last name, Mr. Felker.
I thought it was first name Emilia.
Well, we could reference the meeting minutes from when we decided this if someone wants to dig into the files.
Oh, for Pete's sake, we don't have time for this. If we all pitch in, we can get the job done and be ready to jump in no time.
But shouldn't someone wait outside and monitor the radiation levels? For safety.
And let me guess, that someone should be the science officer.
I mean, according to ship regulations,
Fine, Emilia can stay. Lucas, grab your radiation scrubber and follow me.
Fine.
Well, now that I'm alone, I think it's time for second breakfast. Pokemon chips. Gotta snack them all. Hey, what you got there? Um, where did you even come from? Because you scared the hell out of me. And please get back into our pod before someone sees you. I'm hungry and bored and hungry. I left you with a stack of X-Men comics and a tub of Ben and Jerry's Netflix and chill flavor just this morning. Wait, what does this button do? Don't touch that.
Warp core eject requested. Administrator must approve before proceeding.
Emilia, what's going on up there? Did you just try to eject the warp core?
No, no, everything's fine here. Situation normal. Just a slight energy malfunction. We're all fine up here. How are you? How is the cleaning? How are you doing? Ooh, I think I might have dripped ice cream on the console. Yep, there is ice cream You're all not over even the console holding now. ice cream right now. How is it even pot? Will you please get back in your pot already?
Who's this we business, Emilia? Is there somebody there with you?
Uh, I meant the royal we.
Hey, Emilia, can you be a doll and cancel the warp core eject? I don't want to be stuck in 1997. Fashion
Um,
this decade is terrible.
yeah, of course. Let me get right on that. If you don't go, I'm going to eject your adipose figurine collection, okay? You wouldn't dare. You wouldn't dare try me. Fine. But I'm taking these Pokemon chips with me.
Warp core eject canceled. Maintenance complete. Jump countdown initiated.
Oh, well, whew. Looks like the
That's a lot of
maintenance
work.
is done. Guess it's time to say goodbye.
Much like a certain Raggedy Man, I hate goodbyes. So let's say hello instead to a new adventure.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Stay tuned for more great discussions and interviews by catching us wherever you listen to your favorite podcasts. Also, keep up to date on news and other important information by following us on Instagram and Twitter at The Versecast, or by visiting our website, theversecast.com.
And if you want to follow me, you can find me on Twitter, sort of, at EmiliaU. And if you want to find me on Instagram instead, you can find me at EmiliaFU.
I am still fighting the good fight on Twitter by barely being there. And if you want to find me there, it's at random_white guy.
If you want to follow me, Lucas Longaker, you can follow me at Luconian Logic on Instagram, Threads, Twitter, and pretty much everywhere else online. And then there's BB, who's, I guess, still on a spacecation. You can follow her at Bridget Brogan16 on Instagram. And then finally, there's our producer, Stephen Prusikowski, who last I heard was chilling with the Morlocks, because I think he likes his mutants weird and hideous. You can find him on Letterboxd, Twitter, Instagram as @Film Snork. And also check out his podcast, TV Topics. Who's his latest guest? He got Mike Birbiglia, I think, who I've been a longtime fan of his comedy. So, yeah, check it out.
Well, there's our music. Thanks so much for listening, and we will see you next time in The Verse.
The Verse is produced by Stephen Prusikowski.
So if you had to attend Xavier School for the Gifted and Talented, is that what it's called?
Gifted youth, I believe.
Okay. Well, regardless, his school, who would you want as your roommate?
Now, is
Think
this,
hard
is
on
this
this.
limited to X-Men 97, or am I allowed to go by comic books?
Let's do comic book.
The easy answers here are the easy X's that you don't want. You don't want Rogue because you don't want to wake
No.
up in the middle of the night and
Yep.
accidentally brush up and then wake up in a coma, or wake up from a coma a few months later. You don't want Wolverine because he
No.
tosses and turns in
No.
his sleep and goes into
Probably has
rages.
nightmares and rages.
Who knows what
I
would
would want to
happen.
hang out drinking beers with him, but I'm going back to my room and he's not my roommate.
Also, I have a funny feeling Storm, since she is claustrophobic, wouldn't like having a roommate too much and would probably be a tough person
She's
to
like a
room
queen,
with.
a goddess. I think
She's
she'd be
cool, but I
hard.
think she'd be a little
I-
high maintenance.
High
Exactly.
maintenance.
I
high
love her,
maintenance.
but I couldn't do it. Honestly, the easy answer. A Nightcrawler. You're not going to do Nightcrawler because Emilia. They don't go to this in the the show, but anytime he does that poofing thing, it smells of sulfur.
Like sulfur. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, so that's a big no-no as well.
I was gonna say
So
I also
I'm
don't want someone who is crawling around in the night, for his name.
He also is
so
very religious-y, and I don't know, man. That's just not my vibe.
Yeah,
so
that's
yeah,
fair.
I'm gonna go with my favorite X-Men being Colossus. He likes to paint, he's quiet,
Oh, he's
and
large, but
he's
keeps
a
in his sunroom.
very caring individual. He cares about other people a lot. So I would think he would be a great roommate.
I think it's a good choice. I mean, like I said though, he's big, so he's gonna take up a lot of room. You're kind of big too,
We're
Norm. I
we're
hope you
we're
guys have a
both big
huge dorm.
guys.
Yeah.
We're both big guys. It's gonna be a big dorm room.
I hope you get king size beds and a big dorm room.
Mhm.
For me, you know who my number one would be? Would be Beast, because he's a science guy. He
He,
loves his
He's
books and
also kind of
movies.
big.
He's
he's
kind of big, but he also hangs from the ceiling, so he can be up there. I'll be down
and he's
here.
furry. Just imagine
Yeah,
during
I have
shedding
a
season.
I have a Pyrenees. I'm very used to it. So this is
Blue
nothing to
hair
me.
everywhere.
I don't know. I just vacuum it up. I get a Roomba that'll choke to death on his hair. But he's so much fun. Like he'd be such a cool roommate. We love music, movies, science. He'd be constantly having great conversations with me. So I prioritize that over, a little bit of dandruff in hair.
Okay, that's
Okay.
fair.
I'm not entirely sure because I definitely don't know as many X-Men, but uh I mean if it's like of the X-Men that we see in the show, um I mean it's got to be Jubilee because like we're similar in age, not only I mean I guess in this hypothetical maybe we're all really young because we're young and gifted, but like just from my perspective right now, I'm like Jubilee because she seems like she wouldn't be a very difficult roommate to like understand. She's young, she wants to like hang out and have fun,
And go
um,
party.
like
Sorry, and go
party.
party.
And she doesn't seem like she would have any huge issues. Like I feel like if her roommate problems would be very typical. It'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, you came home at like 3 in the morning, or like, oh, I got sextiled or something. Like all
Mm,
stuff that I have dealt with and can handle, I think, at this
Yeah.
point. And her powers
Yeah.
also aren't gonna like kill me that easily,
No, her
right.
powers would be one of the
probably.
best reasons to have her as a roommate because you can just be like dance party, fireworks going off all the
Yeah.
time.
And if
Yeah.
I'm at the school for Xavier's school, like I am probably in need of the party. I
Yes.
love Xavier, but I think it would get a little boring there sometimes.
Agreed.
Boring in the terms of like, because he's always like, oh, you gotta learn, you gotta be in class or whatever. Like,
Hey, you got to blow off some steam. I mean, there's the danger room, but still, you got to also blow off some steam. Uh, I was gonna say Jubilee was high on my list because I was like,
Yeah,
she's a
Jubilee
party
would be up
girl. She
there.
likes to have a good time. She seems like she'd be a really fun roommate. Maybe a little messy, a little sloppy. That might bother me a little bit, but I'll take that over 90% of the other X-Men.
I had a
Yeah,
super messy roommate my first year of college, and I was fine with it because I literally just like would push all of her stuff to her side, and there'd be like a line where it's like it looked
Yeah.
like she had like a carpet of clothes,
Yeah.
and then
exactly.
there was my
Yeah,
side.
yeah. Jubilee's definitely the one where like one day of the semester where they finally decided to clean out like their stuff, pulls out like a half-eaten pizza from under the bed that's just all mold. That is
Yeah,
Jubilee.
yeah.
Yes.
That was one of my suite mates the next year who I think my brother was visiting. He was like, oh yeah, you can just sit on my bed. And he was like about to sit on his bed and he was like, but be careful, there might be pizza in there.